Hey guys, welcome. I'm super stoked to have you here. Apologies for the camera quality. You should see this awesome setup we have. I brought this whole thing to make my the DSLR work, so you could have like crystal clear pictures. But it's been a nightmare trying to get that thing to work. So we've just gone the old-fashioned way with the webcam that's unflattering and horrible. So hopefully you focus more on the actual content today rather than the quality of my face. So it's wonderful to have you here. It's pretty awesome. We had about 45 people register. There's a few people that sort of said they couldn't make it last minute. So really, that's a credit to you guys to actually being here today and making the most of this, which is it's super cool because this is genuinely going to be the most valuable 2 hours that we spend on sales together. I'm going to try and keep it at 2 hours. So if you're sort of expecting a time frame, probably 2 hours from now, 12 o'clock my time, depending on where you are, could be a different time. The way to get the most out of today is to unmute yourself and come in with questions, or just type in the chat as you go along. Things that you, I was watching this webinar the other day where someone was saying they called them beer tickets. I don't know, this might be like a UK thing, but basically you give someone a beer ticket when they do something that you like. And so how we applied that to the webinar was like, you guys could write the word beer ticket when you hear something that has like shifted something for you. You've had a paradigm shift. You've like gone, oh, that's really helpful, or I can use that. And then just type it in the chat. Because what will happen is the distinctions that you get will be different from somebody else. And when we have like 10 different people with 10 different distinctions, the actual value of the class itself goes up. And that's obviously what I want for you guys in this next 2 hours. So to make the most out of it, make sure that you ask questions. Make sure that you are like commenting your key learnings in the chat as we go along. And then I guess the last thing would be to follow the workbook. So if you should have an email with the workbook. Does anyone not have it? And I can see if I can post it, or someone can like post a link to the workbook in the chat would be epic. I'll keep an eye on the chat as well. Cool. So that's it today. Remember, lots of questions. There's no silly questions. Please, we're obviously not in person. If we were in person, I'd be chatting with you and I'd be like calling on you if you went quiet and that kind of stuff. So if I go too fast, please slow me down. If I'm going too slow, tell me to hurry up. I've taught this hundreds of times, and so it's second nature for me. And so sometimes I glaze over things. But if you're unsure, please feel comfortable to put your hand up, and I can help you understand it deeper. Cool. So without further ado, let's jump in to the Conversion Summit. So today, you've probably all seen the ads or the description. What we're going to go through is a couple of things. Basically, in short, we're going to look at the 5 stages that consulting deals go through. So the reason why this is important is because when you learn sales from most people, you're given a script, you're given a couple of one-liners, and then it's okay until the point that someone asks you a question where you're off script, right? And you don't have the script, you don't have the line for that. And yes, when we teach, we do have a script, but the script only supplements what I call a framework. And the importance of a framework is that it doesn't matter where you are, you have the ability to adapt based on what's going on in front of you. So you don't ever feel stuck or lost in the sales conversation. It's kind of like a checklist, and we'll move to this in a moment, but if you tick off the checklist, you will make a sale. And we want to try and stay away from as much tactical and script-based selling as possible. And obviously the sleazy one-liners. I was actually talking with someone recently. They had a speaking opportunity and they would ask me about what I do. And usually what I say is, I teach you how to sell without the guru tactics like Grant Cardone. And for those of you who know Grant, I have massive respect for the guy, but I just don't like to sell like that, always be closing. And I was going to say that, but this guy had Grant Cardone's hat on with the big 10X logo on the front of it. And he had all of Grant's bands on as well. And so I had to like bite my tongue middle of the conversation to be like, don't say anything about Grant, because this guy was his #1 fan. So we're going to teach you objection proofing your close. This is a process called reverse qualification. We'll teach that towards the end because the reverse qualification is only as good as the middle part, which is the code of the close. And this is effectively like, if you imagine there's a matrix and there's the boxes that you have to tick in order to close the deal, then that's what the code of the close is. So I'll just spend a couple of minutes sort of telling you about who's going to be taking you through this today, because you're probably sitting there wondering, who's this Caleb guy? So I'm on Facebook. So these ads, what is this? This is me back in 2015, maybe. I graduated from a school in Christchurch called the New Zealand Broadcasting School. So I originally wanted to be a radio DJ. And then as I was studying, I ended up meeting a pretty influential guy called Jack Klutz. And he got me into sales, pretty much, long story short. And he sort of recognized something in me and kind of gave me a leg up, which I was incredibly grateful for. And he basically introduced me. And I remember first time I met him, he's like, where do you want to be 5 years from now? Which, you know, being a coach now, like I know, like that's a question to ask. Like it's a real coachy question to ask. And I was like, I want to be a radio DJ. And he goes, well, I hate to break it to you, son. You'll be earning $25,000 to $35,000 for the first 5 years of your career, so your dreams aren't going to happen. And I remember going, oh, wow, okay. I just crushed my dreams like in the middle of a coffee cafe, like here in Melbourne. And he goes, but do you want to know a pathway that can get you there? And he goes, you know, meet me here tomorrow, and I'll take you on a pathway or a sales pathway that will actually get you there. And he showed me what sales was like. He used to sell to some pretty top-level companies in New Zealand. And so it kind of ignited the passion. And then in 2016, I moved to Melbourne. I started running workshops. And you may recognize some of these people, but some of you may not. But we used to do these 1 or 2 day workshops live, which were this is the virtual version of that today, just condensed. So in 2016, we did this for about 18 months. And I was running workshops, I think, every quarter or so. And then eventually in December, this is my beautiful fiance, who she didn't know it at the time. We'd just gone to Southeast Asia, and we were traveling through Southeast Asia. And this is us at the Cardone Towers in Malaysia before we went over to Langkawi, where I asked her to marry me. Langkawi is this beautiful romantic island off the side of Malaysia. And so we've spent the last kind of 18 months before COVID traveling. And so we were staying in Southeast Asia. We went to Singapore. We just kind of lived that nomadic lifestyle until everything sort of came to a halt and we came home to mum and dad. And so now we're here in Dunedin and it's just freezing cold. So basically, the long story short, I've been here for about 4 years doing the sales stuff. Some of the best results that my clients get. One of our guys did $2.2 million in 12 months. He was a digital marketer. We've had clients do $40,000 in 2 months, multiple times, multiple coaches. And you'll learn more about those people a little bit later. But that's my story. That's sort of who's leading you today. My background is, I've been in sales since I was a young guy, and I just kind of fell in love with it. And I won't talk too much more about me. Let's get into the actual meat and veg of the presentation. So what I've kind of figured is we've put together something called the ethical sales method. And the people that come work with us are really looking to unlock their highest potential. And what that usually means is sometimes it's financial, sometimes it's emotional, but there's a real sense of like, there's another level that you want to tap into that you just feel like you haven't been able to tap into yet. Like 5% of your, like, what would you call it, other than potential, like there's just 5% behind the scenes that just feels like it's locked up and you haven't been able to tap into. And you're like, if I could tap into that, I would feel so free and have this real sense of like freedom, not just financially, but freedom to be me. And I found that the clients that we work with, they really want to do that in a way that feels genuine. So they don't want to have to pretend to be anyone else. They just want to be unapologetically them. And then the last thing that is important to our clients is that they want to achieve mastery. And so wherever you are on this journey at the moment, mastery for me looks like committing to your craft for 10,000 hours. And I remember understanding mastery for the first time when I was in a room with a lady called Sharon Pearson, who trained me in a version of NLP. And I just saw her like doing an intervention. So an intervention is like where you disrupt somebody's patterns live in the room and they have a big breakthrough. And I just remember watching that she was just so good at what she did. She could just like break down these like barriers to this person like being stuck. And it was just like she saw the matrix. And it was at that point I realized what mastery was. It was like 10,000 hours dedicated to your craft. And that's what I became passionate about. It's like, well, how can I achieve mastery in sales? Like, because I really fucking love it. Like, I love learning about it. And a lot of the clients that do love learning about it feel the same, right? They just want to get their hands on all the sales stuff. And what I realized was there's actually 3 parts to becoming really good at sales. And the first one is the deal itself. So learning the structure of a sales conversation so that you can close the deal. The second one is understanding the people in front of you so that you can adapt your deal according to the person. And then the last one is psychology, and that's psychology of yourself. So it's looking at, where am I holding myself back? Do I have any blocks here? And when these 3 things come together, this is what we've found helps clients achieve their highest potential. So our clients on average do probably $10,000 to $20,000 if they're a coach or consultant. Most of the salespeople we work with, they see a return within 30 days. So depending on your numbers, that's like a deal or 2, and your sales cycles, a whole lot of things go into it. But typically on average, 30 to 60 days is the rough time frame that our clients see a massive ROI. And it's because of these 3 things. We help them master the deal, we help them master the people in front of them, and we help them master their own psychology. And so this is what we've noticed is if we have someone that's really good at closing the deal and understands people, they become those people that close at all cost. And you might have seen them in the workplace where it's like, it's the deal above all else, right? Like they understand how to close people and manipulate people into buying. And it just seems like they have no ethics. And on the other side, we have someone else who is like, they're really good with people and they're really good. Like they want to sell, they have a positive psychology around selling, but they just don't have the structure around the deal. And so as a result, they have no results. And then down here, we have people that are like deal at all costs people, and like they've mastered their own psychology, but they just don't, they're out of touch with the people in front of them. They're a bit robotic. We find that these people are non-caring. And so if these are all of the things that you don't like about sales, then you will like our sales process, because it's truly about genuine selling with the freedom to be you and achieving mastery so you can have your highest potential. And so what we do is we actually break this down into what we call 9 projects or 9 accelerators. And they're not in any particular order, but one of them is the ability to read people, which is understanding who's in front of you, what's their buying strategy. The other one is persuasive language patterns. So this is what I learned in NLP, was kind of like an advanced communication strategy. How can you speak to people in a way that that allows you to convey the information you need to in a non-sleazy way? It's just about having powerful words as opposed to lots of words. And so the other one that we have is frame control. So if any of you have read the book Oren Klaff, Pitch Anything, where he talks about the different kinds of frames, or you've ever been ghosted in a sales conversation, then frame control can help you master that. And so then we have, under the deal part, we have 3 projects that we teach our client. The first one is the closing code, which we're going to go into today. We teach some buying psychology, so some left brain, right brain, understanding how the brain responds to logic and emotion. We also teach something called the adaptable close. So how your pitch at the end of the process changes based on who's in front of you, based on the person. And then we look at your own psychology, which is how to remove any kind of sabotage that you have from helping you get what you want. We remove money blocks. Was what I found is one of the things that holds a lot of our clients back is like they are not okay earning more money. And we have this thing in New Zealand called tall poppy syndrome. And I think it's in Australia as well, where like if you're too successful, all the other poppies try to cut you down. And so there's a lot of sabotage and money blocks that happen because of this, because of the way that society treats successful people. Where I had a mentor of mine interview people from the US, and they played a specific entrepreneurial game and the difference between them and Australians. And there doesn't seem to be as much tall poppy in the US. Like, you meet people that are in that culture, and they're very happy to tell you about their results, and it's normal, and they like champion each other, which I think is really interesting. And then obviously last thing is the code of fulfillment. So what happens once money's taken care of? And this is something that my clients sort of, they make more money in 30 to 60 days than they have for their entire life. And then they're like, well, now what? Right? And so there's a real code of fulfillment. And this is the stuff that we start talking about later in the journey. But today we're going to be focusing at the closing code. And so what I just want you to do is like either make a mental note or write it down in your workbook. Just going through these, like there's a couple of gradings that we can put. So red is, man, I have no idea and I have no process. Yellow is kind of like, yeah, maybe. And green is, I'm absolutely nailing it. So if we look at, the first thing, the closing code, what we want to look at here is like, do you have a process that you follow? And does that process perform? If you don't have a process, that's a red. So we would write red in here. If you kind of have a process, you kind of wing it, and sometimes you do it, that's probably an orange. Green is like, I do it every single time, I nail it, and I'm just killing it with my closing rates. So you want to give yourself like just a score here, like a red, a green, or an amber orange. So same thing with the buying psychology is like just grading yourself. Yep, I understand what buying psychology is. I know how to speak logical things. I know how to speak emotional things. That would be green. Red is, what the hell is buying psychology? And amber is somewhere in the middle. So just give yourself one there. Adaptable close. So adaptable closing is, yep, I appreciate these differences in my buyers, and I have a different pitch based on their behavior. And I'm really confident in that. Red is, what the hell is that? Yellow is, maybe. I have a rough idea that there are different kinds of people, but ghosted. So ghosted means if you get to the end of a sales call and the person's like, yeah, I want to buy, and then they don't respond, like it's crickets. It originally came from dating, where like people would be dating and then the person that they were talking to like just stops talking to them. And so, this shows up in sales where the person says yes and then they just like, they go. And they never talk to you again. So there's actually a way you can stop that. The book was Oren Klaff, Oren Claff, and it's called Pitch Anything. It's a really good book for buying psychology and frame control. But if we just go back here, what's a great transition? Great question. So the frame control is, yeah, I understand what a frame is. I understand the different frames within the sales conversation, and I know how to use them to stop things like being left at the end of the conversation, to stop objections that aren't meant to come up till the end, or to stop objections altogether. That's would be a green for frame control. Red is like, what is it? Amber is somewhere in between. So same thing with persuasive language patterns. Green is, yep, I know what it is. Amber's like, what's a language pattern? Red is like, you said what? Is it a language pattern? Like my language influences how people perceive me. So just go red, yellow, green. So reading anyone, this is one of my favorites. If you've listened to my podcast, you'll know that there's 4 buying archetypes. And so people respond differently. They have different preferences in language. They have different value sets. So reading anyone is like, yep, I understand the 4 different archetypes, the warrior, the jester, etc., etc. Red is like, there's 4 different buying styles. So you're starting to see a theme here. And if we just go down to sabotage, so eliminating self-sabotage, green is, I have the results that I want right now and I'm super stoked, and I feel unstoppable. Red is, man, my results are nowhere near where I want them to be. I feel there's a massive gap and I'm, feeling a little bit hopeless. And yellow is somewhere in between. Money is, man, I'm 100% earning what I want to be earning and I'm super comfortable with receiving money for my services. That would be green. Red is, oh, let's not talk about money. Like, let's avoid money altogether. Code of fulfillment is I'm happy and content with where I am right now, and I'm stoked with my progression, and doesn't really matter what happens. I have a really grounded sense of I'm going to be okay. That would be green. Red is like, man, I feel unhappy, I feel miserable, etc. So basically, you should have some colors here. So either red like this, or some greens. And just go ahead and type into the chat. What are you most looking like? Is it mostly green? Is it mostly yellow? Is it mostly red? If you prefer not to say, you don't have to say, but just make a mental note of like, are you mostly red, mostly orange, or mostly green? And here's the thing. Thank you, Tanya. Here's the situation at the moment that is sort of going on in the market. And there are these 4 stages of sales mastery. Pretty red, Joe, mostly green, realize orange to work on. Nice, Steve. Pay particular attention to those orange, and then, if there's content here, just ask me questions so we can help move those to green by the end of the call. Tanya, Joe, awesome. So pay particular attention to like the reds and how we can improve them. We want to get some of those to green by the end of the call. So let's look at the 4 stages of sales mastery. And this is something that I really enjoy. Is this is what I've noticed when I've coached people, is this tends to be the pattern that they have, is we have people who are newbies, which are scared of sales. They avoid sales at all costs. And this would be like stage 1, where sales is overwhelming. I don't want to do it because I don't want to sound salesy. And that, if you're there, that would be the first one. The second one is the rookie stage, where like, you've got a few moves when it comes to sales. You're kind of middle of the tier in terms of your team's performance or your performance. These guys close between 10 and 30%, depending on the industry that you're in. And they're making okay money. The professional is more consistently on the 30% of the spectrum. This is probably a top, near the top performer, but the biggest barrier for these guys is the inconsistency in their results. So sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, and their results look like this as opposed to like a straight line heading upwards, or a graph heading upwards with the odd blip on it. And then the top producers, these are the guys that are like number 1 in their field. It's if you're a coach or consultant, this is 80% of the deals that come in, depending on your industry. If you're in business to business, if you're in real estate, this is like 30% of the deals. And you'll know if you're a top producer because the people in your team or the people around you come to you for sales advice. Tim said mostly orange a few months ago, but after a lot more in the green after work with you and a lot of personal growth. You're the man, bro. Absolutely, man. So yeah, just mark down where you are at the moment. These ones here are technically all red, and the green would be up here. This is where we want to get here. So here's problem number 1. If you look online on how to learn more about sales, you get met with a lot of bravado. Certainly that was my experience. And when I say bravado, it's not that I have anything against the Grant Cardones and the Jordan Belforts. I think they're incredible because they've paved the way to make online sales training a thing. Like if you think before Grant, there was not a lot of people in the online space doing it. And if you look at someone like Jordan Belfort, whether you agree with his ethics or not, his actual content is incredible. It's world class. Now, the problem is with the people that love to work with me is that they don't want to sell like that, right? They don't like the hyped up approach to selling. And furthermore, like it can sometimes feel a little word tracky. So word tracky is where you get given a sentence that you have to say in order to overcome a specific objection. Jordan calls it looping, where you loop back around their certainty and you use that to close someone. And that doesn't work for everybody. And so the problem that we have is that you probably don't want to sell like a guru. The next thing is the other frustration that this market has is that the results are inconsistent. Like you don't know why a deal didn't come through, or you're not at the place where you can month in and month out know that you're going to consistently produce. because there's no framework here. It's just like, if I talk to people, maybe they'll buy. The other thing is, the other frustration is you get quite often left in the dark. So what does that mean? Well, left in the dark is you get too many objections. Clients are leaving you at the end of the call and you don't know why, right? It's just mass confusion. So why aren't these people buying? This is what it means to be left in the dark. And as a result, your business or your current results don't reflect your potential. And you kind of have this love-hate relationship with it where you look at it and you're like, that's what I'm doing, but I know I got more. Like, I know there's more in the tank. For some reason, my business just isn't reflecting that. And I think that's probably, the biggest frustration for my people is like, why can't, I'm so much better than what's actually showing up right now. Why can't I unlock that? And so if we look at what happens when we get this right, what's on the other side is we have predictable sales results. And I love this one. It's, when I first heard this from a mentor of mine, they said the greatest salespeople always hit their targets. And I was like, no, there's a lot of variables there, isn't there? And they were like, no, you should know whether or not you're going to hit your target before the month starts, because you've got a predictable system that helps you do that. The other thing that I find my clients are looking for is wealth building and cash in the bank. And, I was having a chat with Karen at the start of the call about how something crazy, like 80% of Americans were living paycheck to paycheck. And, how scary that is when some of the government assistance stops, is there's going to be a pretty big crisis on our hands. When people, they are living paycheck to paycheck, if the paycheck stops, then they're in trouble. And so one of the key things for this market is to actually start building some cash in the bank, to have more left over at the end of the month than you have expenditure, and then turning that into assets and wealth. The next one is to become a top producer. So whether you're a salesperson or whether you're a coach, you're producing the best results you possibly can. And for coaches, that looks like, I'm recognized by my peers as like a baller. They're like, yeah, she's cracked it, or he's cracked it, or you're a go-to, you're kind of an icon because people know that you're really good at what you do. As a salesperson, what that looks like is you're number one. People are coming to you and you've got swagger and your boss loves you, you're getting bonuses and that kind of stuff. The commissions are great. And there's a real, I had a client of mine, you hear about her later, but she calls it big dick energy, right? And she's a lady, she does binge eating coaching. It's just like, it's big dick energy. And that's kind of what I want for my people, is to walk around, whether you have a dick or not, but to have big dick energy. That you are the top producer and you're the best at what you do. And ultimately, all this culminates in having the freedom to live life on your terms. And it's so much more than sort of cash and location. And this is something that Donna and I did for the last 18 months. Freedom to live life on your terms is just freedom to be unapologetically you, right? To be paid what you deserve to be paid, and to have the financial, location, energetic freedom to just be you. And if this resonates with you, then you're definitely our people. And so let's just take a moment right now. We can just zap around the group. What have you learned so far? What are some of the key takeaways? And then we'll pop into the meat and veg of our presentation. So you can either chuck it in the chat, or you can unmute yourself. Karen says, I'm a newbie. Joe says, how little I already know about sales, even though your product is fab. That's true, Joe. Steve, always hitting targets and having a predictable system is cool. Yeah, nice, Steve. Karen says, I'm a newbie, and that's why I'm here. That's awesome. And there's no judgment for wherever you are on the spectrum. Like, we can't grow unless we do that process of self-evaluation. And all of the successful people that I've met and know, they have a self-evaluation loop in there. Right, they are constantly looking at and reflecting on, where am I? Am I as good as I could be? And how do I develop? And that's, there's no ego around it. And this is why I still have mentors now. At 3-4 years in, I've had a mentor every single week since I started this coaching journey, because I want to be feeling dumb. Like I want to be the dumbest person in the room. So yeah, awesome, appreciate it. Yes, Joe, you're in the right place. What we're going to be looking at today is the closing codes and the psychology, which is the deal part of our method. Let's talk about the deal and specifically the closing code. So this is something that we call the performance pyramid. This is a little bit similar to the other one that we talked about before. And this is where down the bottom where most people are scared and avoiding sales. Level 2 is undercharging, ghosted, and getting too many objections. Level 3 is 30 to 60% of the deals you're closing a pretty good close rate, but you're still inconsistent. And then the top level is where you've got consistent replicable results at an 80% close rate. So what I'm going to introduce you today, this is where we're going to actually get into the training itself, is part of our IP called the closing code. And I did a post about this on my personal page, going deeper on, not necessarily deeper, but sort of explaining how you do all of these steps. But today we're actually going to really focus on making sure that you get the meat and veg. So this part here, the diagnostic and the mention, is like this underpins everything. If you get this right, everything else will fall into place, which is why we're going to focus on this. And so if you think about like a building, the diagnostic and the mention is the foundation, and then all the other steps are just kind of built on top of that. You need them, but the house won't stand without a solid foundation. So when we look at a sales conversation, these are the 5 things that need to happen. And the first one is you've got to set an agenda. And so agenda setting is really quickly to post on my personal page. If you want it, we can go to it. But it looks like just setting the agenda for the actual call. Here's what we're here to do. This is what we're looking to achieve. And this is the flow, right? And yeah, I can answer more questions around that, but really I want to teach this core part because this is the most valuable. The diagnostic we're going to get into a moment, the mention in a second. So the wrap and the invitation, the wrap is about removing objections, which I'll teach you a quick process about that at the end. And the invitation is, it's closing, but it's closing in a way that feels like an invite as opposed to convincing someone. And so this is why I call it the invitation, is I don't like closing is fine, but if you do the rest of the process well, the invitation feels much easier, right? It's not a hard close push. It's like they want to join. The client is selling themselves to you. Let's look at someone that did this really well. This was my big dick energy client called Eloise. When we started working together, this was back in March in the pandemic. She had no IP, no authority, and no sales ability. She was pretty confused and struggling to language everything she did to the market so that they got it. And she didn't think the market would pay high ticket prices for her services. So we spent some time on what we call a sales game plan session and nailed her messaging and positioning and gave her a framework that she could follow. She realized that she could language herself to the market and the leads came much easier. She signed her first paid client, $3K, within a couple of weeks of working together. Then she went on to do 40K sales in 60 days. She's now super confident, full-time, and on track to being a multiple 6-figure coach in the next 12 months. And since working together, she's actually hired a salesperson. She's got so many leads. She's brought on a salesperson to help her because she's growing so fast. So let's look at the first step. This is where we want to start taking some notes. This is called the diagnostic. And so what I want you to imagine with the diagnostic is you're literally like a doctor. Right. So this is, if we're looking at the sales process, we've just gone into the agenda. We've said, hey, Joe, look, this is what we're going to be doing today. This is roughly how long it's going to take. This is what we're looking to achieve. They're like, yep, sweet. You get the yes. So now you are the doctor, the sales doctor, the consultant that is here to find out what is going on for your prospect right now. What are all of their symptoms so that you can prescribe some kind of medicine or some kind of fix to their problems. That's how I want you to think about this, is you are now a sales doctor. So one of the first steps that we need to do, and we will go to this deeper, so I'm going to give you a bird's eye view, then we'll go down and we'll give you like an in-depth view, is your purpose here is to find a prospect's frustration. So what does that mean? Is most people, if you think about, and I've shown you this at the start of the call, where we went through what your frustrations were. And if you resonated with those frustrations, you felt like I got you and I understand what's going on. And there's a certain level of resonance and expertise that you associate to me because I know your frustration in advance. And so this is what you need to do with your prospects, is to what is their frustration right now. So depending on whatever industry that you're in, you want to start making a list of what are the common frustrations. The second thing is, when you combine several frustrations together, the prospect has a fear, right? And if you think about what we talked about at the start of the call, I gave you 3 frustrations, and then the fear was that your business will never reflect your potential. And this is what you want to be thinking about in your call, is like, what are the frustrations, and what is that prospect's fear? If they left it unchanged, what are they truly worried about? And if you can get them to talk about it, that's awesome. And I'll show you how we can do that in a second. And the last thing is, what is the worst case scenario? Right? So you want to find your prospects' frustrations. What are they scared of? And what could be the worst case for them? Very grim background here. So let me just show you another client who figured this out. Let's call him Angus. This guy was feeling guilty and greedy about earning more money. Like, it was really hard to get this person to spend any money on themselves. Right? They needed money. They needed money to be hard to earn, and as a result, they're living off $1 meals from food vendors in streets in Thailand. Like, they were living in Thailand, and these guys, they had money, right? But they were paying $1 for meals, and they didn't think there was a reality in which earning money was effortless and without guilt, which is a ton of what my clients go through. The high-ticket game plan, sales game plan session, and we busted all the limiting beliefs around money being easy. This particular client realized it was okay to earn a shitload of money, and that allowed it to be easy and effortless. And they went on to just crush it. This one here did 22K on payment plans and put 10K in the bank. Now they're living in Bali like a king through COVID, in a villa, and he's got a full-time chef and cleaners. It's just, this is the guy that felt guilty about earning, right? So worry about the key takeaways in a second. We'll just go through to the mansion part. So the mansion itself, what I want you to imagine is, like, in everybody's mind, they have this ideal scenario that they're painting. So when we talk about, like, what is your dream and where do you want to be right now relative to what's actually happening? Like, if we think about with the sales stuff, you jumped on this call because there's a dream outcome that you're looking to achieve, right? And that could be a certain revenue number. It could be a certain developmental level. But for most people, especially on this call, it's like, I want to be earning X amount of dollars. That's typically your mansion. Now, your prospects have a similar mansion. And what that means is, like, they have a specific dream reality that they want to achieve. And when we contrast their dream reality versus their current situation, the diagnostic and the mansion, we create something in their mind called cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is a term from the field of psychology, which is there's a gap, or there's a frustration, or like a feeling of like, I don't like this, between where I am now and the expectation of what I thought I would have by now. So I'll say that again. So cognitive dissonance is, this is where I am now, and here's the expectation of where I thought I would be by now. Here's my diagnosis, and here's the mansion that I thought I would have by now. This is really critical to understand about sales. I'll say that again. Cognitive dissonance is understanding where I am now and the frustration around the expectation of where I thought I would be by now. And if we use the metaphor again, it's the diagnosis versus the mansion that I thought I would have. If you can discover that in your prospects, this is what triggers the buying response in the brain. Because wherever there's cognitive dissonance, we go to close it and fill it. And so part of developing that is we just flip what we did before. So before we found the frustrations, now we want to find the wants. What does our prospect want? What do they desire, right? We combine the wants with the desires, and then ultimately that results in what is their best case scenario. What do they ultimately want? And so what this does is you have the diagnosis on one side, and you have the mansion on the other, and this creates this gap. And this gap is cognitive dissonance, which is what your prospect will fill with your process or your product. And this is what we're looking to do. Again, more clients have just figured this stuff out. This was April after the pandemic, 316K. This guy's a digital marketer. This one had inconsistent performance, and so we were sort of helping even that out. He was trying to do the journey alone, and he didn't ask for help. And then we originally worked together, and then we came back again. He was the guy who did 2.2 million. He's on track to do something similar again this month. And there was a direct correlation. Like before me, he was doing 50K. After, we got him up to 215 and 300K a month in sales made. And yeah, he earns commission off that, so that's not cash collected, in case you're wondering. So we spent some time in the high ticket / sales game plan session, got him clear on what to measure. And so then he realized that no matter what was happening externally, he always had control over his numbers. And that's a key thing when it comes to predictable sales results is it doesn't matter what happens externally, you always have control over your results. So yeah, he did 12K the month before we worked together. And then 60 days later, he did 316. He did 250K the month that we worked together, and then 316K the month after that. And he's been really consistent. So he basically paid for our entire coaching in the first month. It's hilarious. So what we're going to do now is we're going to move into how do we find what the symptoms and the mention are. So if you've got your workbook there, this is the this is the symptom checklist. And this is where it's going to get like juicy. So what we want to do is you can either take your note, the book out, you can write into that, or just put it into a Word doc or something, is we need to know the cognitive dissonance that our clients have by sort of guessing in advance. So if we, on this side here, this is where we have the clients' frustrations and their fears and the worst case. That's on that side. And then on this side, this is where we have the desires, the wants, and the best case. And you sit right in the middle. You sit here. And your job in the sales conversation is to take note of the symptoms and the desires, right? Like, can be put really simply if you boil the sales conversation down, is you want to look at what is my prospect frustrated about? What are they scared of? What is the worst case scenario? And those can literally be your questions, right? We can boil down to be that easy. And one of the biggest mistakes that I see with sales is people try to overcomplicate the shit out of it, right? And what they do is they talk more to compensate for their lack of structure. So have you ever been in that situation where you're just like talk, and it's just to compensate for the lack of structure, right? Because you don't actually know what to ask, so you just ask anything. And so what we want to do is we want to get your process down to a fine art of there should be specific questions and specific outcomes that you're looking to achieve. And what we're going to do is we're going to flesh that out here. So what I want to do is I just need a volunteer, and I'll workshop this through with you. And depending on how we go for time, we can do multiple people, but I'll just go with the first person that chucks their hand up. Nathan, do you want to do this? Yeah, all right.
What's up, bro?
Hey, man, how are you? Excuse the headset. I look like a dog. Cool. All right. So, Nathan, what are you selling, man?
Coaching.
Cool. Okay. So everyone watching, I want you to do something first, right? So I want you to do similar. So follow us. So what are we selling? And so we've got coaching. So the first thing we want to do is we want to think about what are the outcomes for your prospect upon doing coaching with you. What do they get on the other side?
they get freedom, and
By the way, dude, it's totally normal to be asked this question and then not know. And
right.
it's a fucking good example of how many people don't actually think about this, which is just reinforcing how powerful this is, because your prospect knows what you want, but we haven't thought about it. So if you got this right, this would suck, because then what I was teaching wouldn't make sense, right? So the fact that you're struggling with this is wonderful, because everybody is, and no one really had the courage to be like, I'm struggling with this.
Yeah,
so,
it'll, like, you asked that question. The answer I want to say is like, it depends, and then that tells me that the way that I feel about it is that every person that comes to me has something different, which helps me to understand that I don't actually have a specific client in mind.
Yeah. So my understanding is you do two types of things, right? You've got the relationship piece, and then you've got like the men's personal development piece. Is there anything else?
Yeah, no, it's mainly the men's stuff right now.
Okay, cool. So say a man comes to you, maybe it's easier to talk about their pain. Like, what is their frustration when they come to you?
Yeah, so the frustration would be they're having doubts about their relationship.
Cool. So for everyone else watching and workshopping, you can go one of two ways. So number one, in the middle, what are you selling? Number two, what are the outcomes, or what are the frustrations and pains? So you can go either way. So Kieran, I know you're in B2B selling farm equipment. So you want to think about what are their frustrations before hiring you guys and hiring a solution, and what do they perceive that they want on the other side of working with you? Steve, I know you're in sales and you got some other coaching stuff going on. So you want to think about, like, what are they frustrated before you? What do they want after you, right? If anyone else is unclear about the task, just let me know, but we're just going to keep workshopping through. Cool. So doubts about their relationship. What else, man?
They feel disconnected from their partner and misaligned. And they feel worried or anxious about the future.
Cool. Anything else?
Yeah, they feel frustrated and stuck. They don't know what to do.
So here's another really interesting piece about people. Some people will find the frustrations easier, and some people will find the wants easier. So what we just learned about you is we tried to go to wants first, and it's easier for you to talk about frustrations and fears than it is wants and desires.
Yeah, totally.
Really important to know, because in your sales process, you'll be lopsided. You'll be really good at talking and digging into frustrations and fears, but you won't future pace them and paint their desires.
Yeah, that's true, man. I love talking about the shitty stuff. Like even if they want to tell me about the things they want, I seem to just want to question them back to how shitty they're feeling.
Yeah, which is
maybe do I like making people feel shitty? I don't know.
Well, if we don't go too deep, it's a behavioral filter called past assurance based. Now, obviously, I don't want to make anyone shit the bed with this level of complexity, but what that means is your brain has the most experience looking at worst case scenario.
That sounds about right.
So you are naturally devil's advocate.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. It causes problems in my own relationship, actually.
Yeah, and that's when it's a clue that it's turned too far. is when an opportunity comes to you or an idea comes to you, and then you just look at why it's shit. And it's not that because the thing that fucking does your head in is it's not that you're trying to be mean, which is how it's perceived. It's just how you think. And that's actually you caring. They don't get that. And this is what understanding the person is about, is knowing, like, just because you talk about worst case scenario doesn't mean that you don't care. And a little bit of tweaking in this where, you actually spend a little bit of time developing future-based wants and desires and understanding how your prospects need to do that, because that's what creates the gap, right? So at the moment, if you just do fear, the gap is small.
Right.
You need a little bit of desire after you've built the fear so that triggers the, like, God, I have to fucking do this. And so remember that most people will do one better than the other. And I have good news for you. The frustration and fear is the harder one to learn. So you're kind of in the best position to catapult your results, and actually doing this process, you'll see, your sales results will double. I guarantee you. Like, if you do this well, your results will double just off this one task. Because the amount of people because you'll be really good at closing people that are the same as you, but you'll struggle with people like me who are future people. Right. All I want to talk to you about is my dreams. And you're like, but your dreams won't happen. You're like, yeah, but I buy based on my dreams.
Yeah, so, right.
Yeah. So hopefully that was...
What do you call it? Past?
Hey? Past assurance based. It's what we call a meta filter. A meta pattern.
All right, cool. Well, thank you for...
Yeah, all good. So let's flesh this out a little bit more. So doubts about their relationship. So what specifically would they tell themselves with the doubts in their relationship? Maybe this person isn't for me.
Yeah. Should I stay or should I go?
Yeah. Should I stay or go? How does being disconnected to their partner show up as an actual problem, like a tangible?
Constant arguments that reach resolution.
What else?
Silence and just a shitty feeling in the stomach, always. Attempting to connect and feeling blocked or shut out, and the frustration of that.
Nice.
Yeah, no joy, difficult to love.
So if they don't have joy, what do they have instead?
Numbness and suffering.
Nice. Oh, can you just feel how heavy this just got? And this is typically what happens when you get people to talk about their problems. You can actually notice there's a heaviness in the air. See how much more powerful getting them to talk about things like this is than, how are you at the moment? Like, I'm disconnected from my partner. That's how you know it's a problem, but they don't know it's a problem that way. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So what you're looking for is like, and you can even mind read these things. You can say to them, you'll be like, hey, let's have a chat about what's going on. They'll say something about partner, and you'll be like, just what I did. So tell me more. What does doubts about your relationship actually mean? Like, I'm thinking maybe this person isn't for me. I'm thinking, should I stay or should I go? Right? And then you go, well, tell me what's disconnected from your partner mean? Are we having arguments and we don't reach resolutions? There's a silence all the time and a shitty feeling. I feel like I'm walking on eggshells. Yeah. So your goal is to dig a layer deeper.
Yeah.
And this is like when you do this exercise, for everyone that is doing this, you want to write this shit down and then ask the questions that I asked, which was, how is this a problem? Or what does that mean? So define it, right? So think about the common frustrations that your prospect has and define it deeper. And so what this does is this now gives you like a cheat sheet in advance for when you are talking to the person in front of you. You say, okay, cool, let's have a chat. What's going on at the moment? What you're looking for is to check some of these things off. Because if you check these things off, you're going to know that you're starting to build a problem. Just, can you guys let me know, like, if is this landing, or do I need to explain it again? Just type a yes in the chat if this is landing. Yeah, cool. All right. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the other side, and then I'll take another person. So if you want to be that person, type yes in the chat. Caitlin, I'd like to work with you because you have a consulting, or Karen, just for the contrast, because we're doing personal development at the moment. I'd like to do something a little bit more tangible. So we got both. Cool. All right. So let's talk about dimension. So the first thing that Nathan said is they get freedom, right? So just think in your head, what is the question that you're going to ask now that Nathan said freedom? Or type it in the chat. What question can I ask here that is the opposite, or that'll help us progress this? If you can understand that question, then you're one step ahead to being much better at sales.
I think freedom is the want, as opposed to the frustration of feeling trapped and the fear of being more and more trapped.
Nice, well done.
So their solution, freedom, tends to be, I got to get out. And that's the only option. But if that's recurring over and over in relationships, then freedom needs to mean something else, something deeper.
Yeah, nice work, Tanya. Nice, Steve. Yeah, awesome. So question I would ask here is, like, define freedom for them. Like, if they say they want freedom, what do they actually mean if we translate that?
Yeah, so you would have to find that out.
Yeah. Well, what do you think it is?
I think it means clarity and alignment to values and an ability to live and experience higher levels of self-expression while doing so along with a partner who's doing the same.
Awesome. So this is a perfect example of someone who's a master of their craft, but doesn't necessarily know how his prospects language it. So your prospects are not going to come to you and say, I want to live and experience a higher level of self-expression.
Yeah,
that's what they want. But people that are really good at what they do, they use jargon language.
Right.
And so you and I know what that means, right? But I'm indoctrinated in the personal development world, so I know what a higher expression, self-expression is.
Right.
And I understand a word like alignment.
Right.
Your prospects.
They might say, I want to have more sex.
Yes. So more sex, more intimacy. What else?
More adventure.
Define adventure.
Spontaneity and fun.
What kind of activities would they do?
Nature and clarity and certainty in the relationship.
Cool. So define clarity and certainty. Guys, are you seeing the pattern here? Like what I'm doing and what you need to do as a salesperson. So someone is going to say the thing, just get curious, right? Like, I have an idea what clarity and certainty is, but what I know doesn't fucking matter. I want to know what Nathan means by clarity and certainty. You want to know what your prospect means by clarity and certainty. And look how much further we got by just saying, well, what do you mean by adventure? What does that look like? So you are literally just being curious about what they're saying. And I know that seems overly simplistic, but it's so hard to just shut the fuck up and do that. And most people are like, oh yeah, cool, I know what that means. And they make assumptions. Right. But the assumptions are what kill a sale. So what does clarity and certainty? Because if it looks like you're actually in relationship coaching for men. Yeah, and this is the other thing that happens when we do this exercise is we get really clear about the problem that you solve, Nathan.
Yeah.
And you are helping men who experience this level of like, you know, they feel trapped in their relationship. They feel kind of, I love that, they feel locked out of love, or they feel hard to love.
Yeah.
They're constantly feeling like they're attempting to connect with their partner, but they get shut out and they don't know why. So they're confused.
Right.
They have doubts about their relationship.
Right. They feel like nothing they do is right. So it's a feeling of constantly having to be better and better and better. So they want to feel like wanted and needed and loved and worshipped.
Nice. Worshipped. They want to feel like a valued part of the relationship.
Yeah. They want to feel supported and in a team, growing towards something, and to know what that is.
Yeah, this is awesome.
We're working towards, you know, that we know each other's values, that both people are doing the work for growth,
so that they can
so that they can connect more deeply.
Which means
the solidarity to confront and overcome any obstacle together.
That's awesome. Yeah. So check this out, right? Now that we've done this exercise, and I would encourage everyone to, like, you know, we've done a really quick version of it, but do it and do it often. So hi, I'm Nathan. I help men who are feeling locked out of love, walking on eggshells, and have a real trouble connecting to their partner. They get shut down a lot when it comes to initiating sex. They're worried about the future, and they're often telling themselves, you know, they have doubts about their relationship, wondering if this person is for them, or should I stay or should I go? And we work together, and I actually help them have a lot more sex, more intimacy, create more adventure, variety, and fun by getting out in nature and doing things together. As a result, they feel wanted, needed, and loved, worshipped even, like a valued member of the relationship, and supported and on the same team. They're growing towards the same thing. They know each other's values, and they connect more deeply, which means they have the solidarity to confront and overcome any obstacle together. Oh man, did anyone else get chills?
That's pretty cool.
So your job in the sales conversation is to ask questions to find that answer.
This has been really helpful in highlighting, because I can identify what's been happening in the very few sales calls that I've had recently.
You'll be really good at the fears, just not so great at building the future.
Yeah, I think I also go into solution mode very quickly.
Yeah. So one of the things I teach people is earn the right to pitch. So what that means is don't pitch until you're clear on the diagnostic and the mention.
Mm.
So it's like a doctor prescribing pills before they know the full problem. And that doctor would get sued for malpractice.
Mm.
So you need to have the same discipline in your sales conversations. Don't provide the solution until you're clear on the problem. Otherwise, I'll come and sue you for malpractice.
Wow. Could you say that again, please?
Yeah. Don't provide the solution until you're really clear on the problem. Otherwise, I'll come sue you for malpractice.
Oh, I've done that a couple of times.
Yeah. Well, we all have. Because one of the other paradigm shifts is you need to understand a sales conversation is not a coaching conversation.
Mm.
And one of the things that we like to do in sales conversations is we want to fix everything. That's not how you help. It's the fixing of things within a sales conversation actually stops your prospect from sitting in the pain long enough to want to do anything about it. They're not motivated. And we've all seen people who have got something for free and not done anything with it.
Yeah.
And that's what happens is you give away all your great stuff by not holding back the solution to let them be invested in it. Another way to think about it is, there's a boulder on top of a hill that your client needs to move, and that's the obstacle to their breakthrough. You could move it for them and they just, they learn nothing. Or the money that they invest, if it's nothing, they've got no leverage. But if they invest something and they pay you for the coaching, they've got a hell of a lot of leverage to move that boulder now. And they'll move hell and earth to get it done. And then the boulder's gone. But there's no leverage if it's free.
Right.
It's just awesome.
Thank you, bro.
Yeah, you're welcome. Can we get like I don't know, how do you clap in Zoom? Can we just, I don't know, maybe, there we go, raising hands. Everyone's raising their hands for you, man. Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
So,
And I just realized that I'm looking very sexy in my profile picture.
oh, yeah. How do I see that? Where are you?
Oh, it's... you go.
Oh, that's your partner. Great. Awesome. All right. Let's find someone else and we'll workshop the same things. You've got a couple of examples that you guys can watch. I would love to chat with Caitlin if you're able to take yourself.
Hi, everybody.
Hey, how you doing?
Good, thank you.
Awesome. So let me clear screen and we will start again. I'll save this for you, Nath, and I'll send it through to you. Cool. Saved. Clear drawing. Awesome. So let's talk about the consulting thing because I want a different example than the personal development.
Sure. So to give a little bit of context for everybody, I am a financial advisor, which means that I go out and work with clients around their personal insurance and their KiwiSaver, so their retirement funds. So the process that I follow is an initial review meeting, which is where I go out and get a sense of people's situation, and that's where we talk about their finances, their health, and their goals. And then I go back for a second meeting, which is when I present a protection plan option. And so the product that would be aligned with that is either an insurance provider or a KiwiSaver specialist.
Oh, this is going to be so good. This is awesome. Okay. I'm so glad that you jumped on. Okay. So you have an initial meeting and then you make then you have a pitch in the second meeting, yeah?
Exactly.
Cool. So your first meeting is essentially, it's the diagnostic and the mention.
Exactly.
And so, oh man, I absolutely love this one because this will move the needle incredibly quickly for you. So what do you think will be easier for you to go to? Should we talk about the frustrations your prospect have or the wants that they have?
I think probably best to start with the frustrations because they lead to the wants, and it's the order in which I talk about it with my clients.
Cool. So a key thing to understand there is just because it comes naturally to you doesn't mean it comes naturally to everybody.
Sure.
So if you do end up with a prospect that wants to talk about their wants first, which is similar to Nathan, let them talk about it and then reverse engineer it.
Perfect.
Cool. All right. So what are the frustrations when they come talk to you in that first meeting?
So it can be a range of things. For a lot of people, the initial reason they agree or they reach out for that is because their premiums have gone up. So it's a pricing, whether they're seeing the value in the protection that they currently have. For other people, it will be that they have experienced people around them needing to claim on their insurance. So there might have been a heart attack or cancer diagnosis in their circle, and that sort of scares them into realizing that they don't have that kind of protection in place for themselves. Often when people end up with a significant change in their situation, so it might be that they've bought a home for the first time or they've had kids, and then those can be quite big triggers of going, shoot, what kind of protection have I got in place? Is it appropriate? And so I guess the fear there is, am I leaving the people I love in a bad situation if I pass away or if I can't work anymore? And then another big reason that people talk to me is concerns about their health. So either they're getting a little bit older and they're starting to worry that the public system's not going to support them well enough, so they're interested in private medical cover, or they have got health concerns which they've gone and looked for insurance themselves and have been turned away or told that they're too risky, and so they want to work with me to see if I can find a better solution for them.
Good. So typically, how does that first meeting go? What are you talking about?
So the first thing that I do is set the agenda, talk to them about what the process looks like working with me. I'm very lucky. I'm partnered with an advisory platforms which has that structure and framework in place. So I've only been working in this role for 5 months, but because I'm working in an environment that's been existing for the last 10 years, I've been able to sort of hang off that structure. And I was just saying, I've got a friend sitting here with me today, and we were talking about how great it is to have a framework to start the journey. But then I really liked what you were talking about when it talks about being genuine to yourself and what works for you, and getting to a point where I can start tweaking that framework so that it really reflects me and the way I want to work with my clients. So I'm definitely starting to step into that space a little bit. But yeah, so set the agenda, explain the full process. So the idea that it's the initial review meeting, come back for that recommendation pitch in sales term, which is also where we get that first commitment of completing applications with the client. There's no commitment in terms of signing or any payment at that stage, but getting them to commit to bettering their situation by starting that process. And then I have that third face-to-face meeting, which is the close, which is when we'd put the cover in place for them and they'd start their first premium payment with the insurance company, which is when I earn my commission.
Cool.
So,
okay.
So this first meeting is around me getting an understanding of their financial situation, so any assets that they have, any lending that they have, so if they've got personal loans or mortgages, etc. We talk about goal setting, so short to medium term goals being between now and retirement, and then what they want life to look like post-retirement. And actually that would be another frustration or fear that I didn't mention earlier, is a lot of people are panicking about retirement. Do they have enough to live the way that they currently are? And I would say for most of my clients, it's about maintaining their current lifestyle when they're no longer working, as opposed to living in a mansion or holidaying in the Bahamas. I would say most of the average Kiwis don't necessarily have their mansions or their dreams set at that level. It's more about staying healthy enough to enjoy time with family and friends and to not have to downsize their lifestyle.
Mm-hmm. This is awesome. This is so good. So, protection in place, brought home. So one of the beautiful things about what you're selling is it's going to be reasonably predictable.
Mm-hmm.
Like most, I would say these fears that you have here are, correct me if I'm wrong, but 90% of the time it's always these three.
Absolutely.
So you can actually shortcut a lot of your sales process by getting to these fears quickly. And so what I mean by that specifically is it's more powerful for them to tell you what the fear is than for you to say what it is.
Mm-hmm.
So if we know in advance that these are the three greatest fears that they have, you want to be asking questions to get them to say it. There's a couple of ways that we can do that. The first way is something that we call prescription, which you actually naturally said before. You might not have known this, but the line most of our clients feel this.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's an extremely persuasive piece of language, which is it's a third party language, which is most of our clients feel like this. So what that does in the brain is that goes, well, I want to be like most of the clients, because people don't want to be on the outside.
Mm.
So if you follow that up with like, most of our clients feel like this, they are worried that the public health system won't support them enough, or they're panicked about retirement, and eventually, or worst case scenario, leaving the people that they love in a bad situation if they can't work. Does that resonate with you? And then what you'll find is after a question like that, they'll either say, yeah, all of them, and you'll just notice all resistance to the sale will just dissipate. It'll just melt, because what you've done is you've mind read their greatest fear.
Mm.
The beautiful thing is you actually know all of these frustrations and fears already. It's just about putting it in a very succinct manner to trigger that response. And so one of the other things that you want to do, so that example for everyone, this is what we call a prescription. And so the structure of a prescription is third party. Most of our clients, or most people, this is an example of a third party. And then the next thing is prescribe the pain or the frustration. And you can do this with desires as well. So you can say most of our clients want to create a blah. And so third party, and then prescribe the pain or the frustration, which is blah, blah. And then the third one is we call, you got to do a check-in. Does that resonate with you? And then the last one's what we call utilization, which is tell me more. So what utilization does is, now that you've prescribed look, and in the perfect case scenario, you do these one at a time. So depending on how certain you are that this is the problem, where you know that this person is triggered because they don't want to leave the people that they love in a bad situation, you'd prescribe that one. You go, is there any chance that you're here because you're a little bit worried about that same thing happening to you and leaving your loved ones in a bad situation? They're like, oh yeah, absolutely. And you go, tell me more.
Mm.
And what will happen is when you say, tell me more, they will start building the frustration and the fear for you without you having to say anything. The hardest part is just saying nothing. Because we have this incessant need to want to fill the gap. So just let them talk themselves into the sale. The more they talk, it's like, imagine that like you stand here and they stand here. The more you talk, the further they move away. The more they talk, the further they come to you. And if they talk, eventually they'll close the gap. You'll be side by side, and then they'll close. Now, obviously, that's contextualized with some of the things that you have to get out. So because you're in more of a consultative space, it's okay to ask a couple of questions here and there, but let them talk. Yeah, let them talk about their fear, let them talk about their frustration, and then ask the next question. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Beer ticket.
Yeah, beer ticket. Yay! So let's look on the other side. I would be doing this in the same meeting. So with your initial meeting, what you're doing is you're building cognitive dissonance. So you're building a gap. Is there any particular reason why you don't offer? Do you have to go away and build something?
Yes, the idea is that it's a tailored recommendation. So I talk a lot about the reason that I step away between those two meetings is so that I can go out to the market and find the products that best align with their fears or their situation, because there are a lot of variations in terms of built-in benefits to a lot of these products. And so for some people, if they have children, I want to make sure I'm providing a product that has built-in benefits for kids. And if people don't have kids, well then I can look at all of the products on the market because that's not something that they're going to see value in.
Cool. Awesome. All right. Perfect. So at the end of this initial meeting, are you booking the next meeting on the meeting?
Absolutely.
Okay, good. Because that'll reduce the ghosting if you didn't do that. So that's great. Okay, cool. So let's talk about the wants and desires, because you're really good at the frustration and fear. So let's talk about what's on the other side.
So for a lot of my clients, it's quite interesting talking in this space. And I was challenged quite early on where I went and met with a beneficiary. And when we got to the goal setting stage, she kind of looked at me a bit affronted as if, well, can't you see I'm living on bare bones and I can't have dreams, I can't have wants. And part of me did feel a bit guilty asking that question of her, but then I pushed through, and I'm really glad I did, because we had this really beautiful moment where she talked about her son is a professional gamer, a job I almost didn't know existed. And so because he was underage at the time that he needed to go to this competition, she was taken along by his employer as his guardian, I guess. And so she got to travel overseas. And she's telling me about this story, and she was just lighting up and talking about this day trip she'd had to Paris and going to the States with him, etc. And so I said to her, so ideally, would you love to do that again at some stage? And she's like, oh, absolutely. And even if I could just travel around New Zealand a little bit. So suddenly, one of her goals and dreams is to be in a position where she can continue to venture out and see and experience new things.
Oh, that's really cool. So another little thing that we can do, so this is part of the language thing that I teach. This is called a softening prime. So softening prime is when you get the sense that, so you obviously picked up earlier that this client was a bit standoffish about future stuff. So what a softening prime does is it'll help you deliver the piece of content you need to deliver while disarming that standoffish nature that they have. So we've gone a little bit advanced, but I just can't help it because this is a great teachable moment. So a softening prime will help you bypass that filter. So you did it really well. It's actually really well through helping her open up about her grandson and then getting to that. You can actually shortcut that by, it's kind of like you put it out, you call it out in advance. So you say something along the lines of, this might be a little confronting. So whatever you perceive their resistance is to answering your question, right? Like if, for example, she didn't want to talk about it, right? Or your prospects don't want to talk about the actual fear that's going on. So you can use this to soften them up to then get them to answer the question. And so it's really actually quite simple. It's this might be a little confronting, right? So you just call out whatever it is. This question might sound a little strange. This might feel uncomfortable to answer. Do you see the?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, cool. So then what we have to add is what we call a negate and a why. So negate is but. So what but does is when used specifically in language, it removes everything before it. And then they hear the why part on the other side of this linguistic prime. So you'll say this might be a little confronting, which kind of disables their croc brain that has that response of like, don't ask me confronting questions. And you go, this might sound a little confronting. And what will happen is they will, because we have what we call a mismatch filter inside of our brains. And what that does is it'll disagree with you. Like everyone has this little disagreement thing. Some are stronger than others. When we go into the people part of the training, we talk about mismatch filters. Everyone has a small one, but some people have a hard one. And the hard one is like, you might have had a prospect like this where you ask them questions and then they say, no, that's not it, it's this. And it's exactly what you said, but just in their own words. Have you had that?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, awesome. So that's what we call a mismatch filter. And those people that are hard nose, it's a really hard filter. Everyone has a small one, but some people have a really large one. So if we say this might be a little confronting, what happens is the mismatch filter in our brain fires up and it goes, well, it's not confronting. I'm going to answer that, which is, it's hilariously simple and how crazy powerful it is.
Mm-hmm.
And when you start noticing this pattern in clients and you figure it out, it's like linguistic jujitsu. Is they're going to disagree with you, so you say the opposite. So you go, look, this is going to sound ridiculous. And they go, it's not going to sound ridiculous. And then they disagree with you and answer the question. And when you first learn this, it's like stepping into the matrix of going, that is so strangely predictable. It's scary. So super simple. Just call out what you perceive their concern is. So she doesn't want to talk about it. You go, look, I know this seems uncomfortable. And that's the call out part, right? That's the first bit. Then the second part is but, and then we give them a why. I need to ask because I want to make sure you have the best possible care. Policy. Tell me about your future aspiration, or whatever the question was.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, the question that you have, we just slap this on the front. It's like a question upgrade. Right?
Yeah.
Where it's okay. So we're going to ask the question, but for some reason they weren't going to answer it. So we slap the softener on front of it, and then and then you get to ask your question and they will answer it every single time. It's ridiculous. So the key parts of that softening, call out what the resistance is. Hey, look, this might feel a little uncomfortable. Give them a but, and then give them a why. I need to ask because I want to make sure that you have the best possible care. And they're like, oh, fair enough. Yeah, okay.
And this is so true, Caleb. I have this and I use it more. It's easier for me to talk about this and use exactly what you're talking about when I'm talking about medical history, because that does play a big part in people's cover and the way that the insurance companies will underwrite their policies. And as you can probably imagine, for those of us that are here or I guess just everywhere in the world at the moment with COVID-19, the insurance companies are being really, really sensitive around mental health. And so when clients disclose a mental health history to me, I'm needing to ask more follow-up questions than I previously would have had to. And so same thing, I've been using this now. This might be a little bit uncomfortable, or I can appreciate that this is something that might feel a bit confronting to talk about, but I need to ask some follow-up questions to ensure that we can provide the right context to the insurance company and get the best possible outcome when they're underwriting. And then ask questions like, was your mental health triggered by a certain event, or how long have you been on medication for, etc., etc. And same thing, and you're right, I hadn't seen it laid out as clearly as you've done for us today, but they nod along and they understand that it's not me being nosy or antagonistic. There's a real purpose behind that question.
Yes. And when these are done, because believe it or not, you're actually naturally really good at sales. And I know that because I train a lot of people. And I didn't think that I would be explaining primes and softening in a class that's meant to be like entry to sales. So, that's not me trying to blow smoke up your ass. You have a natural ability to communicate. Now, what'll happen is once you're conscious of what you're doing that is so effective and you do it with conscious competence, your results will skyrocket. Because now you know what you're doing and you can do it with volition. And you'll go next level because you'll be like, oh, right, I know what to do now because I do that all the time. So I'm just going to put that here now. And then what happens is the conversation will go much faster. You'll build rapport much quicker. There'll be less breaks in rapport. And as a result, your pitches will stick. Cool. So I just need to keep an eye on the time. I'm majorly distracted. Oh, wow. Okay. So basically with the mansion, you want to flip the frustrations and put it on the other side. So what's the opposite of the 3 fears?
So knowing that you have the financial security for your loved ones, family especially, having access to, or having the support in place that if you need medical treatment, you can go and get it straight away. So that's the private medical care, being able to jump public wait lists or be able to afford treatments that aren't subsidised by the government. And then knowing that you've got the right advice and the right systems in place for your retirement. So a big one for people at the moment is, are they in the right KiwiSaver fund? Are they getting the absolute best outcome from whatever balance is sitting in there at this point in time? And also understanding how they can use that KiwiSaver at retirement. There's a lot of misconceptions around what happens at the 65 mark with KiwiSaver. So I do a lot of guest teaching around that, and that's been where I've noticed that, especially the last couple of weeks, I've had a lot of light bulb moments with my clients when they realize that they can continue using their KiwiSaver at 65. It doesn't stop at that age. So
cool. Very cool. So again, here you want them to start speaking out these kind of buzzwords. And so once this happens, when you've got the diagnostic and then you've got them to define their wants, then that'll create the gap that they will then want to fill with you. And so you've got a couple of tools there that will help you do that more efficiently. If I had more time, I would flesh this out. So I recommend that you just go and flesh this mansion wants and desires thing out. Like specifically, like this is a big one. Afford treatments that aren't subsidized. So financial security. So what are the other emotional feelings / benefits when the logical policy is in place? Yeah, so like, for example, they will feel financially secure. Another thing is, they'll feel content, they'll feel peace, they'll feel certain, they'll feel in control. You want to get a couple of those emotional buzzwords in there, not just logical.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, I'm going to keep going. Great. I'm so glad I picked you. That's some epic content that we got out.
Thank you so much, Caleb.
Yeah, you're welcome. Cool. Everyone's saying thank you. Awesome. All right, can we get like the clap thing again? I don't know how we're doing it, but yeah, we got a fab. Awesome. Got the raising hands thing going. Everyone's raising their hands. It's wicked. Okay, cool. So hopefully, guys, that clears up, like, how do we do this, right? We have a Facebook group. If you put this in there, I'm happy to like shoot a video about your thing and offer you some advice. That's what the Facebook group is there for. So if that is valuable, do that. All right, so cool. So now that we have the symptoms checklist, you're probably thinking, okay, so what do I actually do with it? And what I want to introduce you to is what we call the sales matrix. And so the sales matrix, go be Dad, Steve, all good. Thank you for being here, brother. The sales matrix is kind of like, once you know your symptoms, then in the sales conversation, this is the checklist that we create in order to build that problem, right? So this circle represents the problem that you've stretched through talking with someone. And what you want to do is you want to tick off some diagnostics as you go, right? So if we think about the symptoms that we've brainstormed and we've figured out that our market has, in the sales conversation, you want to have this graph in front of you to be like, okay, cool. So where am I? Right. Okay. So we're doing diagnostic or we're doing mention. And what your prospect might do is they might oscillate between the two, and that's okay, as long as you're ticking these off. And what you're looking for is, I don't know how advanced I should go here, but we're looking for feelings and logic. So usually with an asterisk, the fear that people have is the feeling, and the frustration is the logic. So for example, you are frustrated that you're not closing as many deals as you want to, which would be the feeling. Well, that just contradicts itself. Man, I want to teach feelings and logic, but we'll just be here for forever. So the short version of that is feeling is everything inside the person, right? It's internal. So if they're sad, if they're scared, if they're frustrated, that's internal. And it's the same on the other side here, right? So anything that's inside. A relationship, is that inside or outside? Can we just check in the chat just so I can see if you... Nice. So if it's outside, logical or emotional? Logical. Awesome. So that's the rule of thumb. Yeah. So your prospect's response, if it is outside of them, then it's logical. If it's inside of them, it's emotional. And so your role during the diagnostic is to get 3 times logic and 3 times emotion from the checklist that we developed before. So if we think about Nathan's example, one of the things was they are trapped. Is that internal or external? Emotional or logical when someone feels trapped? Let's get it away. It's internal, right? Now, if they're not having sex, is that internal? That's funny. I was gonna say, is that in them or is that outside of them? Maturity, Caleb. You're a professional. So sex as a concept, is it inside or is it? Why do I have to pick Nathan's example? As a concept, it's outside of the person, right?
Depends.
Yeah. Man, I'm cracking myself up here. How the conversation has gone downhill. So we have internal and external. So sex is outside of the person, so it's a logical concept. So if the person is having no sex, we tick off one box for the logic, and we go, awesome. Then we go, they feel trapped. They feel trapped, and we tick the second box, right? And what we're looking for is a total of 3 logic and 3 emotion. So your code really looks like this. For those of you who don't know, Don is my partner. We don't actually have an office at the moment because we're COVID refugees. staying here in New Zealand. Okay, so what I want you to think about is in the sales conversation, this is your checkbox, yeah? This is your like, how do I know if the sale is happening or not? And what you'll notice is most, oh, come on, most sales we've gone way more advanced than I expected to today. So if there's a little bit of like wheels spinning and that kind of stuff, it's totally okay. If you know, there's time for questions at the end that you can just ask. So what this looks like is logic and emotion. Logic and emotion. Logic and emotion. So what you would do is when you ask questions and someone says, you know, oh, I'm feeling trapped, you go, yeah, got it. So yeah, we're not having enough sex. Yeah, got it. And what you're looking for is a total of 6. That's okay, Joe. I would have loved to have you on. I can send you, we can do that process. I'll send you a link to my calendar and we can do that process that we were going to do. So no worries. So in the sales conversation, this is what you're looking to do, right? You just want to tick these off. Now, if you tick all 12 of these boxes off during your process, from the diagnostic and the mention, this is what we call the code of a sale. This is how you know that you are in the best possible position to convert somebody from curious to become a committed prospect. Now, the reason why sales don't go through is because you've missed some of these. All good, brother. No worries at all. I totally got sidetracked, and hopefully it was more valuable than yeah, it was relevant. Good facilitation, Caleb. So yeah, so guys, this is the code. This is what you want to have in front of you at all times. Is just writing, like having this little matrix in front of you, going, okay, cool. I got 6 boxes on this side and 6 boxes on this side, and I need the internal stuff and I need the external stuff. And if you do this, this is how you can have massive certainty that you've done everything that you can to convert this person in a completely non-sleazy way. It's just a, you know, you ticked off in their brain everything that they need to trigger that buying response. Any questions about this before I move on? Because I want to wrap up. Yeah, so let's talk about key takeaways. What have you learned so far? Just drop some learnings in the chat. And we'll get to the wrapping up today. We need interlude music around now. The thing about, if you can language your key takeaways, it will stay. All the things. Anything in particular, just what have you got the most value out of learning today? How to think about the symptoms of the client. Nice, yeah. If you start envisaging that metaphor in a sales conversation, you just position yourself as a doctor, and you are the symptom checker, and you wouldn't prescribe a solution before you knew all the symptoms to make sure that you had the best possible solution for the prospect. You'll do really well. You will do really, really well. Get the clients to use their words. Yeah. Use words yourself. Yeah, nice. It's very easy as someone who's an expert in your field to just chuck a whole lot of words down. I'm guilty of it too, which is why I was a little bit cautious about teaching the logic and emotion and that kind of stuff, because it's better to go deeper than it is wide, so that you guys actually get this concept and you can use it. Yeah, they need to sit in their pain. So there's a difference between a coaching conversation, where you're helping someone, and a sales conversation. And the prospects need a little bit of pain in order to leverage themselves to create the momentum to get the breakthrough. Awesome. So just to recap, today we looked at the closing code, and we actually did some persuasive language pattern stuff as well. I taught you 2 of maybe 5 of the most powerful ones. And so we have another 7 or 8 different modules that we teach in our Ethical Sales Academy, or our Ethical Sales Method. So if you loved today, then you would definitely love to check that out. If you would like to know more about that, then there's a link at the end of this that you can book in, jump in my calendar, and we can have a chat about whether the Ethical Sales Academy is right for you. Before we get there, we just want to look at, what is a good 12 months from you? Now that you've learned what you've learned, what does a good 12 months look like for you? Just to start thinking about, how can I use this? What difference is this going to make? Tanya says it's more powerful for a prospect to tell you their fears. And thank you. Thanks for being here, Tanya. You're awesome. Again, what are we going to use in the next 90 days? It's going to be the most useful. But here's the link. If you would like to get some help and you want to jump on a session with me, it'll be very much workshop-y, like we did with some of the examples today. So if you would like to come and workshop with an hour with me, you can book it to my calendar. Just jump on the link, chuck it in your browser, www.bit.ly. bit.ly/sales game plan, and we can have a more customized chat about what's going on, any specific problems. I'll give you some strategies to walk away with, and if you would like to know about our Ethical Sales Academy, we can talk about that too. So just a big thank you for being here today. We tried to finish on time. I have a habit of getting distracted and over delivering, so my bad. But yeah, thank you for being here. It is awesome. That link will probably come through on email as well. But it's been fun. Keep an eye out. We'll be running another event probably in about a month or so around the people side of things. We're not sure exactly what we're going to do, but there'll be a series of these that we'll go through to explain different parts of the IP. So hopefully that you got some value out of that. There's the link if you want to come and say hello. Otherwise, I'll hang around here for another sort of 5-10 minutes if you just want to have a chit chat and ask some questions. Otherwise, I would love to see you on that game plan. Thank you, Tanya. Thank you for being a first fast follower and showing up. You're awesome. But yeah, I'll hang around if you want to take yourself off mute and just have a chit chat. More than happy to answer any questions. I'll be here for a couple of minutes and then I'll take my lovely fiance out for a coffee and some nibbles, I think. Saturday.
Hey, Caleb, it's Maret.
Hello. Oh, hello. You're not Nathan.
I was like, yeah, I know. I was like stealth mode, sitting here watching with Nate. I was just asking, I wanted to ask you about the prescribing the pain or the fear that you were talking about before as part of the with the diagnosis and the diagnostic and the mansion, and then a little bit of what we do in prescribing. Is there what is the best way to frame up or to sort of start that prescriptive?
Were you there for the structure of it?
Yes, I was here for the whole time.
What do you mean by best way to frame it up?
Because we go through what you were sharing about, talking about saying, most of our clients, experience this and talk about their frustrations and fears. And then you said to prescribe their pain or fear and frustration. When you say prescribe, is that to kind of take them through what we can help them with, or is that to?
Oh, right. It's more like what their fear or their frustration is. So, for example, I know that the fear and frustration for clients that work with us is that the business doesn't reflect their potential.
Okay.
So you would have heard me say that a lot during this training because that's what I'm prescribing. Mm-hmm. And if you listen back to when I say it, I say, look, a lot of the clients that we work with, which is a real subtle, like a language piece to be like, I want to be a client that they work with because that's the problem that I have. So I'll say something along the lines of, a lot of the clients that we work with experience this frustration. And it doesn't need any framing. It's almost like a statement.
Right. Okay.
To help them know that you know their problem.
Okay. That makes sense. Yep.
Yeah. So whatever problem that you know that they have after doing the symptom checklist, you can prescribe that. Yeah, does that?
Yeah, got it. Thank you. And I just needed clarity around what you meant by the prescription piece. So thank you. That makes sense.
Yeah, because the reason why I know it's a bit confusing, I need to tighten up that language, because I talk about prescribing the solution as a doctor, but then also I've called this a prescription prime, because you're prescribing the emotion that you want them to feel. That's why it's called, yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions before I go get some nibbles? Thank you guys for being here. I had a blast. I cracked myself up. Cool. All right. We will see you guys at another time. Thank you so much. Bye for now.